Welcome into On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Gerry Hamilton. We got three different things we want to talk about in this episode of Talkin Ball. We want to talk about the wide receivers stepping up, Ethan Burke on defense, co-defensive lineman of the week, according to the SEC. And then also, Gerry, you have some recruiting news to fill us in on. But let's start with the wide receiver group. Gerry, this episode of Talkin Ball brought to you by our friend Dr. Brett Robin. All right, let's get started with the wide receivers, Gerry. Emmett Mosley with a big touchdown, 2 touchdown catches against Mississippi State. Parker Livingston with 2 touchdown catches. Ryan Wingo with a huge game, 84 yards receiving. And then also we had DeAndre Moore was that key underneath receiver when Texas needed first downs on Saturday. Sark went and spoke at length about this receiver unit and how it's kind of rounding into form right now.
Yeah, and look, this is, I think, the first game where you saw what Texas could look like at wide receiver at full strength. Now that Emmett Mosley's getting his feet underneath him as a Texas Longhorn, right? DeAndre Moore had the concussion earlier this year. Ryan Wingo making plays after the catch, and then Parker Livingston in his role, which maybe he's played some less snaps because of Emmett Mosley, but he's making the most of them. And then we have Emmett Mosley as a blocker, which I think is very important. But I think it's interesting when you look at these 4 guys now, Bobby. I think there's some distinguishing traits now when we're looking at their the season stats. Ryan Wingo is your catch and run playmaking wide receiver. DeAndre Moore, Mosley, and Livingston are your run and catch receivers. And I think it's definitely good to distinguish and talk about that because you have to bring those guys together. Use them when they're at their best, how they're at their best. And the one thing about Ryan Wingo, while he's had his issues consistently catching the football, what he provided Saturday was what Arch Manning's needed so much this year. Here's the pitch. There's the catch. Now go maximize a quick pass. And that's what happened twice Saturday against Mississippi State. And then you saw Emmett Mosley with 2 tremendous touchdown catches, right? Both adjusting to the ball in different ways. One was here, one was a sliding catch here. Parker Livingston had 2 terrific touchdown catches. The second one was all world. And then DeAndre Moore, I think, is the most consistent route runner. If you know where a guy's going to be on the field of this group, it's DeAndre Moore. And now how do A.J. Milwee and Sark bring this all together the rest of the season? Maybe the fourth quarter of Mississippi State was a glimpse at that.
I think you put it the right way when you first started that. This is kind of what you thought the receiver group would be when it's full strength. I mean, maybe Saturday was the first time we literally saw, okay, Emmett Mosley now has enough reps with Arch. Parker Livingston, DeAndre Moore, Ryan Wingo, they're finally getting their sea legs. And I think in the fourth quarter, they were used to running routes. Every single one of them was tired. I would add this too. Sark, the circle of trust is 4.
Yep.
And even though Parker Livingston is now not starting, quote unquote, he's getting starters reps. They found ways to get him and Emmett Mosley involved, as well as Wingo and Moore. I think we found the rotation, and Mosley's certainly in it. Livingston's certainly in it. There's a spot for both of them on this roster and in how they play. And I agree with you. I mean, Ryan Wingo is their big play threat, whether that's a deep ball that he catches on that 3rd and 10 or a short bubble that he can break a couple tackles and kind of zoom past people. He is your big play guy. The other guys have maybe some real red zone possibilities to him, particularly Mosley and Livingston, because to your point, Gerry, those were, and to Sark's point from his conversation today at the media availability, those 2 guys made really good catches in very tight windows. That only, I mean, Caldwell made a nice pass. Arch made 3 of those passes. Those were difficult catches. At least we think now that they are rounding into form, that it's coming along. All right. I want to talk next about our friend Brett Robin before we get going on to Ethan Burke. It is a different Austin Westlake grad, Dr. Brett Robin at Austin Orthopedic Institute, for sponsoring On Texas Football. Dr. Robin, a former Longhorn running back, knows what it takes to stay in the game, and he's here for athletes of all ages. Specializing in musculoskeletal health, Dr. Robin treats joint pain and injuries with a conservative approach first, but also offers advanced surgical options, including arthroscopic procedures, fracture management, and total joint replacements. With convenient offices in Austin, Georgetown, and Killeen, Dr. Robin is accepting new patients now. If you're looking for a top-notch orthopedic, give Dr. Robin a call, 512-856-1000. That's 512-856-1000, and get back to your active lifestyle and doing what you love. By the way, Dr. Robin is going to join us tomorrow morning on Coffee and Football to talk about Arch Manning's concussion, get his understanding of the protocol rules, et cetera. Hey, Jerry, I mentioned the Westlake grad, Ethan Burke. Tremendous game from him on Saturday. Got SEC co-defensive lineman of the week for his performance. Had the strip sack to end the game. But really, Jerry, it was just a tremendous all-around effort for him. Most plays he's played this year in a game. He really provided, and I mentioned this, and we talked about it this morning. I want to get your take on it. He was absolutely, in my opinion, part of the glue of this defense, particularly in the fourth quarter when they had to have some short yardage stops while also getting after the quarterback at times. I mean, he provided both of those for Texas.
Yeah, and look, he had a career high in tackles with 7. That's the most tackles he's had in a game, but it went beyond that, right? He had the sack. He had the forced fumble. He had the blocked field goal, which is really big when you think about a game going into overtime, right? That blocked field goal, yes, Texas missed one, so they evened out. But still, he had that block early in that game. But he had his best career game. I don't think there's any doubt about it. And look, he's a guy that maybe, Bobby, going into the year, he hasn't had as productive of a season as we thought he might, rushing the quarterback, the sack numbers, and that sort of thing. But what I liked about his play Saturday was he made plays against the run. He put pressure on the quarterback. He caused a turnover, and then he made a play on special teams. So he literally was in everything you could ask him to do. He was positive in impacting winning for Texas. And there's very few defensive players that actually can do that in a game by itself. And that's why he got co-defensive lineman of the week. And again, there's some stick-to-itiveness with Ethan Burke this year, because I doubt if you look at his stats, he would say that's what I had envisioned for myself. He has 22 tackles and 1 sack through now 8 games. I doubt that's what through 7 games. I doubt that's what he thinks he should have or thought he would have going into the season. But again, it's not maybe sometimes how you start, it's how this thing finishes. And this may be big for him in kind of turning the corner this season, because the rest of the way, he's going to have to play the run against Vanderbilt. He's going to have to play the run against Georgia. And then he's going to have to play the run against A&M. So there's games coming up that I'm not saying he can replicate this game totally, but there's some opponents coming up that is going to provide him opportunity to play the run and then rush the passer and show what he's got. And this is important tape for him because he is going to the NFL draft after this year.
Yeah. I thought about that last play of the game, Jerry. Not only did they have Lance Jackson, the true freshman at end, Ethan Burke was on the field. So was Colin Simmons, and so was Anthony Hill.
Yeah.
Those were the guys they lined up along with Alex January. Those were the guys they lined up and said, let's get after the quarterback. And they did it in winning the game in overtime like they did. I also want to mention Anthony Hill as we talk about this and guys that had whale of a game on Saturday. He was the SEC co-defensive player of the week overall, 2.5 sacks. Congratulations to Anthony on his accomplishments. We talked about that at length, even in post-game, just how good he was. Also, I want to talk now next about recruiting, Jerry. We mentioned the wide receivers in their play. We've talked about Ethan Burke and his accomplishments. Recruiting news is coming out quite a bit right now. Last week, you introduced us to a linebacker from Miami, Karon Maycock, out of Miami. Told us he was going to be visiting for the Vanderbilt game. Now a new name that we talked about last week, but has actually set up an official visit, Teray Davis, defensive back out of Boulder, Colorado, visiting apparently.
Yeah, he's scheduled to make his official visit this weekend as well. He was at Washington last week in a one-time UCLA commit. His father played at Colorado. Texas offered him 2 weeks ago. Now he's coming in for an official visit, 6'1", 185. Kind of a versatile defensive back. I'm not sure I could pinpoint what he would specifically play at the next level right now. Some people like him at corner. Some people like him as a nickel or a safety. I think it's kind of up in the air. But the one thing he is a playmaker at Fairview there in Boulder. And he was at Washington last weekend. People that cover Washington actually broke the news of his official visit to Texas this weekend. So that's at least 2 official visitors this weekend, along with Karon Maycock, the 6'2", 210-pound linebacker from Miami Central, who's a FSU commit currently, who picked FSU initially over Alabama and Florida. So that's at least 2 official visitors. In the news that I know a lot of people are asking about right now is the coaching changes at LSU. Wait, what can that do for Texas and some of the players they recruited? Well, I can tell you that defensive tackle Richard Anderson, arguably the best in the country. He's a monster. I saw him 2 weeks ago when I went down to see Hayward Howard Jr. Texas has been in contact with him, and Texas is already working on getting him on campus. Now let's see if he starts appearing on some other campuses. I think if he does, Texas will probably be one of them. When I was down there 2 weeks ago, the schools I was given by the staff that were really coming after Anderson were Texas, Ole Miss, Florida State, among others. He never made an official visit to Texas. He shut it down early. So that is something for the next LSU staff, whoever is hired, if they have time, that he committed to LSU early for a reason, and he never really got on campus at a place like Texas for an OV. But Texas is going to be all in there. You look at Trenton Henderson, the edge for LSU that's committed to LSU from Pensacola Pine Forest. He made an official visit to Texas, picked LSU over Texas and Florida. Well, now that's 2 schools that don't have a coach of his final 3. So what will happen there? Now, one thing about Texas that didn't have in their favor at that time and wouldn't have in their favor now is the depth that the young edges at Texas. And that's still there, and that's even more evident than ever if you watch this season. So that could be an issue. The corner, Havon Finney out of Sierra Canyon, same school as Richard Wesley, the 5-star edge commitment. Havon Finney, he's a guy that Texas tried to get on an OV, never really happened. They're in contact with him. Then you have Micah Smith, the offensive tackle out of Vero Beach, committed to UCLA, which I think Ohio State's actually the leader despite his commitment to UCLA still being on the recruiting pages. Texas is working on getting him on campus for an OV. So there's a lot. Kendall Gerville, the Florida commitment who picked Florida over Texas, the D lineman out of Fort Myers. Texas has been expecting him on campus in November. So things are starting to move. The coaching carousel is getting crazy. I think it's going to get crazier too. I think this is going to be a wild coaching carousel cycle. But Texas has at least 2 OVs right now, where we'll be adding to this visitor list, unofficial or official, as the week moves along.
So Karon Maycock out of Miami, linebacker, and a defensive back, Teray Davis out of Boulder, Colorado, are expected to visit Texas this coming weekend. Maycock currently committed to Florida State. Davis no longer committed, correct? So although he did just visit Washington, Teray Davis, again, defensive back. Davis, by the way, also a basketball player, very accomplished basketball player. The other 3 you mentioned, just to be clear, also were, or the other 4, Havon Finney, currently committed to LSU, a defensive back out of Chatsworth, California. Then you also have Richard Anderson, the defensive lineman out of New Orleans, Edna Carr High School, currently committed to LSU. And then 2 other guys committed elsewhere. Micah Smith, an offensive lineman, committed to UCLA out of Vero Beach. You think he's leaning to Ohio State basically right now. And then Kendall Gerville, who Texas was in on, but then ultimately chose Florida, young man out of South Florida as well. And I forgot about to add on Trenton Henderson, the defensive end out of Pensacola. All of those guys. This is what we talk about when people overstate, Jerry, the importance of summer recruiting. It's not that summer recruiting doesn't matter. It absolutely does. But Sark has done this every single year.
Yeah.
He comes back and, picks through a couple guys, tries to figure out where he's at. And then all of a sudden, 4 or 5 guys end up being pretty hot commodities at the end that are pretty good football players for the university. Grayson Littleton right now, guys, is similarly situated a year ago at this time, and he is currently starting for the University of Texas. It's not like these guys aren't good players or for whatever reason. It's that Texas is just now able to get in on them, whether it's a coaching change or an identification issue for a player like out of Boulder, Colorado, for example. I mean, it is a very real thing that Texas benefits from, in my opinion, because they do a good job with evaluation, and they've got a good staff there in the personnel department. All right, anything else before we let folks go, Jerry, on this episode of Talkin Ball?
Texas continues to pursue Jalen Lott, the Oregon commitment. Now, he's not in the coaching carousel part of that equation, but Texas continues to pursue Jalen Lott, the Oregon commitment, who obviously is a Texas legacy. Some people have asked about Jabari Mack, the receiver from Destrehan, who picked LSU over Texas. Could he potentially come back in the picture? Well, we'll see what happens with Jalen Lott, but that now gives Texas two options potentially as a final high school receiver in this class.
Interesting. All right. That'll do it for this episode of Talkin Ball. Thanks again to Dr. Brett Robin of Austin Orthopedic Institute. If you need an orthopedic, give Dr. Robin a call, 512-856-1000. That's 512-856-1000. Until next time, I'll talk to you later, Jerry. We've got Bob Shipley, Rod Babers, and CJ Vogel coming up 7:15 tonight on the live stream. Hope you have a good one. Hook 'em.